Good morning and welcome to our public hearing regarding uh, Pittsburgh City Council's public hearing for Thursday, September 9th, 2021, relative to bills 2021-1336 and 2021-1337. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 1336, Residential Moderate Density R1DL Single Unit Detached Residential, Low Density in R1DVL Single Unit Detached Residential, Very Low Density R2M 2 Unit Residential Moderate Density and RP Residential Plan Unit Development to EMI Educational Medical Institution, 27 parcels in the Allegheny County Block and Lot System, 7th and 14th Wards. Bill number 1337, resolution approving a new institutional master plan under the Pittsburgh Code Title 9, Zoning Article 2, Chapter 905, Sections 90503D and Article 7, Chapter 922, Section 92212G for Chatham University Institutional Master Plan dated March 2021 on property to be zoned EMI Educational Medical Institution, District 7th and 14th Ward, Council District number 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank everyone for their patience this morning as I worked through some technical difficulties, getting started a little bit late. So thank you for your patience. And I hope that other council members will be joining us shortly. The first order of business will be an introduction by Department of City Planning, today, I believe, represented by Kate Rakes. And Kate, please correct me if I'm wrong, if you have anyone else joining you today.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. We do have Corey Lehman, the zoning administrator, here as well, but I will do a brief introduction. So this is legislation for a new institutional master plan and to change the residential zoning to EMI, Educational Medical Institution. Planning Commission made a positive recommendation to Council on March 9th of 2021 with one condition: that the applicant continue to meet with the Murray Hill Avenue residents to resolve issues brought up during the meeting, including traffic patterns, buffers, and the treatment of 3 single-family homes, and the inclusion of the Murray Hill Avenue edge in the plan. Since that Planning Commission action, Chatham has provided documentation that they have continued discussions with the neighbors. And since then as well, they have also removed one parcel from the application, and that is reflected in the current legislation and the institutional master plan. And that property is 1167 Murray Hill. That's my introduction.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And now we will move on to a presentation from the applicant, Chatham University, and their invited guests. So if each of you from Chatham University can please introduce yourself first, and then you can start your presentation.
Thanks very much, Erica. I'm David Feingold, the president of Chatham University, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you this morning. For over 150 years, Chatham has been a vital part of the Pittsburgh community. We were founded back in 1869 to create an opportunity for young women to get a degree in Pittsburgh, which had not existed before us. And today, we are ranked the #1 national university in all of Pennsylvania for social mobility in terms of the percentage of low-income students who come to Chatham and their graduation rates. At a time when many colleges and universities in our region are struggling, as you saw with the recent consolidation of the 3 state system campuses into one, Chatham is thriving. We have more than doubled the size of our undergraduate student population in the last 6 years since we went all gender. And this fall, we were pleased to welcome our largest ever class to Chatham. But thriving for Chatham doesn't just mean the university's doing well, it means we're benefiting the entire community. We are a leader in sustainability, following the legacy of our most famous alum, Rachel Carson, with a campus devoted to building a greener future, where we've educated thousands of Pittsburgh school children on the sustainable development goals. We partner with the Pittsburgh Food Bank to grow an acre of food to address food deserts in Pittsburgh and help with food access issues. We're providing millions of dollars worth of trauma-informed care thanks to a second national grant we've had for our counseling psych program. And we were a key mover in the revitalization of Bakery Square with our East Side campus, and have partnered with the city of Wilkinsburg on Graham Field, with Munhall on their historic Gray Field restoration. But we're here today to talk about our Shadyside Master Plan and how we can make this unique resource in Pittsburgh, one of the most beautiful campuses you'll see in any major city, thriving for the next 25 years. If you don't believe me about the campus, it's featured in The Chair right now on Netflix, but it's been a real benefit to our whole neighborhood throughout the pandemic, with neighbors walking their dogs, using our field, chatting outside with neighbors. It's been the home to the popular Music and Arts Day Camp for the last more than 70 years. And our Chapel Hill is where many people in Pittsburgh learned how to sleigh ride. And today is serving as a more than $1 million partnership with PWSA to address stormwater issues. The reason we're here today with this master plan is to ensure Chatham continues to thrive for the next 25 or more years. That's going to be in an increasingly competitive environment to attract students locally, nationally, and internationally as the number of high school grads fall. And so what we're trying to do in this plan is respect the unique nature of our campus and enable us to grow so Chatham can be here for many decades to come. I want to turn it over now to our partner, Ken Doino, the head of Rothschild Doino, who has been our partner in this master planning process.
Thank you, President Feingold. It's a pleasure to be here, Council, and thank you for the opportunity. We tried this earlier. I'm going to go and share screen to give a brief presentation. Again, my name is Ken Doino with the firm Rothschild Doino Collaborative. We've had the honor of working with Chatham University over the last many years, helping to shape a new master plan vision that's really inward focused in their beautiful 37-acre East Side campus that sits between Shadyside and Squirrel Hill, primarily in Squirrel Hill, but primarily accessed via Fifth Avenue from Shadyside. So we name it the Shadyside campus in order to direct traffic appropriately to the site. This is a great beginning shot because it shows the pastoral qualities of the campus sitting in the middle of the bustling East End, with the chapel as a landmark on the Chapel Hill, where David mentioned the sledding experiences for many people. Chatham really helped develop this, working first with staff and faculty and students to understand how to create meaningfully connected educational systems that could be improved and expanded upon within the campus. So it's really focusing inward, but it's really a vision of also building upon the strengths and the stewardship from a sustainability standpoint, fostering healthy and inclusive and accessible communities, and growing those communities to be appealing to more folks, and to really focus on a space that can enhance the student experience. So as President Feingold mentioned, Chatham can remain successful and competitive in a very competitive field. This comes at the arrival of President Feingold's term as president. So it's a very exciting time for the university to be shaping this. What you see here is an aerial view with Shadyside to the right, Squirrel Hill to the left. And this is the outline of the 37 acres that comprise the Shadyside campus. What you see is it is a beautiful wooded hillside. What you can't see is some of the three-dimensional differences between the height at the top of the new quad area, the old quad, and then the residential area. A lot of our focus is in this area and making sure that the spaces that are brought together and connected really make a continuous path of experience from the athletic field through the converted art and design center, the athletic fitness center that was developed about 20 years ago now, new dining experiences in the lower campus quad and the historic Mellon Center building, going up the hill to the newer quad, sitting in front of the J.K. Mellon Library, going through the Falk building to the historic old quad, adjacent to the chapel, then down the hill to the residential district, past the sciences building, the Buell Science Building, and really focusing most of our master plan 10-year development plan along that line. That really allows for the preservation of the wooded space along Woodland Road, which is the primary access point. We have secondary access also via Murray Hill Avenue and then pedestrian access from Shady Avenue below. What you can see here is kind of a diagram of the light purple areas where we're looking at renovating existing buildings, and then other purple areas where we're looking at adding buildings. This is being an addition as well, here and here over the next 10 years of the development plan. That 10-year focus is on improving the character of that central campus connecting spine, increasing the academic spaces with particularly focusing on sciences and infill areas that can improve academic access, improving the student experience, and increasing the right balance of student life at the center of campus, where we have dorms along the wooded area, dorms along Fifth Avenue, Woodland Hall in the middle of campus, and improving Dilworth as a residential, so we have the right balance of activity right in the center. Through all of that, we will also continue Chatham's leadership as in sustainability. And that begins with the sort of academic quad that sits right in the middle here, increasing the connections and activating that space with these connections through the existing buildings, as well as making exciting terminal points. That starts with a project that is just about to ready to start construction. We're about to start construction before the pandemic hit. That is taking Anderson Dining Hall and turning that into a space that students can really participate in for the full day and evening activities, and sort of modernizing the 70s era building that has not been upgraded since it was initially built. The second big project of the first 5 that we hope to see pursued over the next 5 years would be that connection through Fall Call that connects the new quad in front of the library. Recently added to the library was a Holocaust Center exhibit. We also renovated Cafe Rachel to make this a hub of activity. So these 2 things have actually happened already. This is a big project to connect through and make student experience spaces at the ground floor so that the old quad space really becomes a connected area here, rather than presently people either walk around the building or come through kind of fire stairs to get through the building. The next component is going down from the old quad area down the hill to Fifth Avenue. These are additions on the ends of the Buell Science Building that allow for the modern addition that was put on again about 20 years ago to be supplemented with additional science spaces and labs, and really mark the entrance to the pathway down the hill and connecting to the Fifth Avenue Housing District. Fifth Avenue Housing District is something we're very excited about. Chatham University has a strong presence and has been able to establish site control for the entire site of properties along Fifth Avenue. And there's 2 staircases over the hill that connect the upper campus to the lower campus. The scope includes improvements to the traffic intersection here and really developing a stronger pedestrian pathway up through the hillside. But more importantly, or equally important, is really creating a better pedestrian experience along Fifth Avenue. Presently, these buildings have parking in front of them between the buildings and Fifth Avenue. We're looking at consolidating that parking behind the buildings, illuminating the buildings and creating a proper front lawn, and then widening the street by taking the stone wall and pushing that wall back on Fifth Avenue, creating more of a campus pedestrian pathway along Fifth Avenue, something that is always welcome along Fifth Avenue. It's not always the most pleasant street to walk along. With that front lawn space here, there will be connecting roadways to allow access and load in to the residential areas. And the gatehouse at Woodland Road, which is a primary vehicle access point to the campus. The Thompson House here was recently acquired by the university. So now there's a gatehouse on either side. This historic gatehouse was redeveloped going on 15 years ago now. So this whole connection area becomes a much stronger front door to the university. The Thompson House will become an alumni center with a new elevator and accessible pathways up to the house itself, as well as a consolidated parking and access, internal access to other dorm spaces from a pedestrian standpoint behind, as well as the pathway up into campus along Woodland Road for both vehicles and pedestrians. Chatham has created over all this time an ecosystem of complementary campuses over the last 20 years. In 2008, Chatham East Side, which is a mere few city blocks away at Penn and Fifth Avenue, was acquired and open to students, focusing on health sciences and additional office spaces. That is a portion of that is still rented out, but that allows for more room for growth and important elbow room to the university itself. Chatham Eden Hall campus in Richland Township on the far northern edge of Allegheny County is 388 acres and is a foundation for sustainable agriculture and learning and educational systems, critical to the future of our planet in these trying times and demanding times. But at the heart of all this, founded in 1869, is the Shadyside campus and those 37 acres. So the focus of this master plan and the capital efforts over the next 10 years is the Shadyside campus. That campus, as David said, is a leader in sustainability. This is actually the gateway where that resident pathway comes down to Fifth Avenue. These are what's called the butterfly balconies, designed in honor of Rachel Carson, most famous alumnus of the university. The university, in addition to the ecosystem of complementary campuses, is providing and advancing leadership as part of the IMP in stormwater, historic stewardship and building reuse, leadership in energy and transformation of energy, as well as the environmental qualities that really motivate everybody to be moving towards a more sustainable planet. That stewardship has included incredible efforts to restore and adaptively reuse historic structures such as the former swimming pool or the gatehouse, which were in very challenged conditions prior to the university's substantial investment, but also creating those types of links with historic buildings that blend contemporary architecture and modern architecture with the historic architecture in line with the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for historic restoration and adaptive reuse. I mentioned stormwater strategies, and David mentioned this as well. The university has gone through a substantial effort with PwC and Alcosan to develop at the top of the hill above Shadyside on Chapel Hill, a stormwater retention system. That's a ladder here, just to give you some sense, and there's 5 of these pits that create stormwater retention cells that will then allow for the open stream here to flow continuously, but in a measured manner, rather than have all of the stormwater flow into the Shadyside piping systems off the campus and create overflow issues in Shadyside. Chatham not only has been donating financially to this, but donated all of this land here as well. So that's part of the Woodland District. Another part of the whole campus, but certainly characteristic of the Woodland Road District, is the Chatham Arboretum. When we talked about environmental qualities, the character of that campus is critical. And the tree coverage and the high canopy trees is something that's unmatched within the East End, other than perhaps Mellon Park or the Shady Frick and Shenley Parks. So it's pretty remarkable to have this in the midst of all this high functioning area. We mentioned also energy leadership, as well as interfacing with the community. As we add to the dormitory space here and here, we're looking in the second half of the first 10 years to do a dormitory expansion at the Murray Hill Avenue access point next to the library. We mentioned that the Holocaust Center has their exhibit here. We're looking at the last residential house here, also having the offices for the Holocaust Center so they can have a copacetic adjacency. This area here is really helping to contain the campus and buffer the neighborhood from the campus with this building. We've been interfacing a little bit, as Kate Rakes mentioned, with the Murray Hill entrance and with Councilwoman Strasburger's leadership, working to add pretty substantial language to the master plan itself. I'll have Walt talk about that. But before we go on to that, just the other aspect is in thinking about this dormitory expansion and this edge of campus, we've also been looking at this as the beginning of a geothermal system that moves from energy consumption as a model to energy trading and exchange between solar panels, building uses, and the ground as a sort of longer term strategy for moving away from fossil fuels. Walt, do you want to start to talk a little bit about the Murray Hill Avenue Neighbors Dialogue?
Yes, my name is Walt Fowler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Finance and Administration at Chatham, and have been involved with this process from the beginning. You can read the details. We've included some of the comments and agreements that we've made with our neighbors on Murray Hill in the actual IMP agreement, but just to comment a little bit further about the plan and the interaction with neighbors, I think our campus in Shadyside is really kind of unique in another way from a campus standpoint, in that we're surrounded virtually on all sides by residential communities, and we appreciate that, and we've tried to be good neighbors over the years. But one thing I think something the IMP process, the institutional master plan process, did was to identify who the neighbors are, and also to activate and reactivate some of the communication between various neighbor groups. So a couple of we've talked several times to Shadyside Action Coalition, a couple times to Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition. Our most kind of intimate neighbor is the Woodland Road Association. Those neighbors who have homes actually within the campus community. We had extensive dialogue with them, and I think one of those neighbors will speak later. Murray Hill is an area where over the last 6 months, we've had ongoing conversations, and I think we've opened those communications back up to the concerns of those neighbors, and it's an important thing also because we are, after all, a college. We have students. Students are not always well behaved, and we actually need to hear from the neighbors immediately when our students are not acting as they should be, and we can't do anything about issues if we don't know about them. So I think we've opened that channel back up again. So with respect to the Murray Hill neighbors, I think the major items there are really behavioral issues with our students, and getting a protocol to address those. Also concerning to the Murray Hill neighbors was the entrance to our library parking lot, which now Ken is putting up. It's we can do better visually, aesthetically than that, and I think that we can also improve the buffering between Murray Hill and also with respect to perhaps buffering for future projects also. So I think that's a big thing. The other thing was mentioned earlier was we actually own 2 houses on Murray Hill, and Ken is pointing those out now. Eventually, we have the ability to buy a 3rd house. They're immediately adjacent to our library parking lot. And there was initially a concern by the Murray Hill neighbors that we would demo those houses and put something that was not consistent with what is really kind of a very special kind of aesthetic on Murray Hill Avenue. Our attempt was never to demolish those houses. And in fact, we removed one of them from the master plan entirely. We want those houses to match the aesthetic of Murray Hill and also the usage to match a residential neighborhood. So I think we've improved and clarified our intent in that regard, and we'll subject those houses to the historic district if someone wants to nominate them, and so that's what's in the master plan. So I hope we've given the neighbors comfort in that regard. So Ken, that's about all I have to say on the.
Yeah, thank you, Walt. I wanted to just thank the councilwoman for all of her efforts in helping that dialogue and having that come to conclusion. On August 8th, we met with a group of the neighbors, had a delightful meeting where we got to go over more of those details and made final modifications that are integrated into the language here. But probably most importantly, we were able to share some of the sketch ideas, and we're looking forward to that dialogue continuing now that we have a bona fide group of interested citizens, all of whom at that meeting in that pool building space, Mellon Boardroom, said they would be willing and interested and eager to participate in looking at these details. So with the conclusion of the IMP, that allows us to start moving forward and continuing that dialogue. And we've appreciated all of that participation, in particular, the 6 months of efforts on the councilwoman's part. And finally, as we move along that same path, we have the second half of the 10-year plan from Dilworth that includes also expanded recreation space, continued improvement of that dining space out into these hub areas, which, you can just look at the character of this campus. It is a treasure in the middle of the East End. It's a treasure for our city. We're very excited to be taking this to the level of an institutional master plan in order to codify what is in fact emerged through the accumulation of all these houses and different properties over time into a solid institution university campus that's appropriately reflected in the zoning as an institutional master plan in an EMI district. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for the presentation. And I really appreciate understanding and having the public's ability to view this, because this is being recorded for future viewing purposes, to be able to view this and understand the plan and be able to see it with their own eyes, kind of from a holistic perspective in the future. So thank you for being here today, all three of you, and for addressing council today. We will now move to testimony from registered speakers, but before we do so, for the record, I want to note that we have been joined by Councilwoman Deb Gross. So for registered speakers, I will announce the next person who is up to speak, followed by the person who is on deck to follow that person. And I'll ask you to please give your name and address for the public record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address council. First speaker is David Baker, followed by Elizabeth Rodens. Is David Baker available? Do not see Mr. Baker. Okay, we will move to Elizabeth Rodens. Do we have Elizabeth here? Okay, does not look like they are here. Next registered speaker is Robert Thompson.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, my name is Robert Thompson. I live at 5816 Kentucky Avenue, Shadyside, 1 block north of 5th Avenue. I have no comments on what Chatham is proposing to do south of 5th Avenue. In fact, it's very commendable. I like what they're doing. I do have a problem when they cross 5th Avenue into Shadyside, into an R2M residential area. Chatham have purchased 2 houses just north of 5th Avenue in Maryland. And right now they're, I guess you could say, small houses, small apartments. In a meeting about several months ago, Chatham said they didn't intend to make any changes to these 2 houses. If they don't intend to make any changes to these 2 houses, why is the zoning change from R2M to educational, institutional, etc.? Because if it is changed, they could demolish these 2 houses, put up in apartment buildings. In essence, they've got their foot in the door in Shadyside. It's like a Trojan horse that can advance down 5th Maryland, etc., etc. And because I've got that zoning changed and we get the next house changed, the next house changed. The people before the last meeting on, I think it was several months ago, said there's no intent to do any of these things like put in a dormitory. If there's no intent to change the type of house in there, then why change the zoning? Because once the zoning is changed, the people who here today say they won't do that, won't be there in the future. And you could change it to like put a dormitory, a several 8-story dormitory in a residential area with limited parking. So my question is, if there's no intent to change the type of housing there, why change the zoning? Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker is Leslie Miller, followed by Skyhawk Kinetic. Do we have Leslie joining us today? I don't see Leslie here. Next speaker is Skyhawk Kinetic. Skyhawk joining us. Okay, I don't see them either. Next speaker is Beverly Filtz, followed by Steve Mosides.
Hello, my name is Beverly Filtz, and I live at 5742 Fifth Avenue in the 5742 Fifth Avenue Condominium Association. Our building is located at the corner of Murray Hill Avenue and Fifth Avenue, next to Chatham's Chung Apartments. Before I go on, I'd just like to question Mr. Doino, who indicated that all of the parking lots on the Fifth Avenue in front of the apartment buildings would be removed, when in fact you are going to retain the parking lot in front of the Chung building. We would actually like to know why that is the case, because we would actually like to have green space next to us as well. At any rate, we vehemently oppose the change from residential multi-use to EMI zoning for all of the Chatham properties along Fifth Avenue between Woodland Road and Murray Hill Avenue, which Chatham refers to as the Fifth Avenue District. Under EMI zoning, an educational or medical institution essentially has carte blanche to erect any kind of structure it wants. A case in point is the new 6-story CMU dorm on 5th at Devonshire, which is strongly opposed by both nearby residents and a local church. If you turn to page 65 of the EMP, you will see a future development site designated in dark purple that covers the entire area encompassing the Chung and Chatham apartments on Fifth Avenue. On page 63, you will find a description of what is planned for this site. Chatham plans to demolish the 4-story Chung and Chatham apartments and replace them with one enormous building. Chatham intends that this structure be a gateway to the upper campus from Fifth Avenue. In that capacity, it will probably have no residential space, but will rather contain office, academic, and student-centered related areas, as well as a multi-level parking deck. In order to provide what Chatham calls vertical access to the upper campus, this building will have to easily be 6, 7, or more stories in height, significantly higher than the existing apartment buildings or anything else in the area. It will tower above our building and impact the privacy of our third-floor owners who have rooftop decks. We understand that this is part of the long-range plan, but if zoning is allowed to change to EMI now, we may not be able to prevent this from happening in the future. The stretch of Fifth Avenue between Shady and Moorwood, well beyond our building, is almost exclusively residential and contains nothing even remotely like what Chatham plans as a replacement for the Chung and Chatham apartments. As your constituents, we are asking for your support in opposing Chatham's attempt to use EMI zoning as a way to steamroll this project and other potentially undesirable changes to the Fifth Avenue district. As taxpayers and homeowners, we are concerned about how these changes will impact the value of our property. We demand that the properties within Chatham's Fifth Avenue district remain zoned as they currently are, residential multi-use, moderate density, to maintain the charm and character of the Fifth Avenue corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Steve Mosides, followed by Vanessa Spiro.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing me. I live at 1234 Murray Hill Avenue. It's at the top of the hill near West Woodlands entrance from Murray Hill. And I'm in support of the rezoning. I think that Chatham has been a great neighbor and I walk my dog on the campus every day. And I've been there for 5 years. I've watched the campus evolve and the student population grow. And I think it's been super healthy. The life and vitality on the campus this year has been just really great. Last year was very sad that there weren't kids on the campus. I think the master plan is really mostly internally facing improvements. I mean, you look at the comparison between, say, CMU and Pitt, it's dramatically different. We do have a treasure and they know it, they respect it. Their sustainable vision is unmatched by any of the colleges. If you look at collectively the 3 campuses, and they're really a leader in this way, and they should be trusted to make the right moves. I love what they're doing on Fifth Avenue. I think there needs to be more space. There needs to be a presence there. And I think the green space is going to be welcomed, and the connections through the campus are really what makes this master plan sing, I think. We walk in so many different directions, and it's always nice learning new things about the campus, because the 37 acres are a real treasure for the city. I'm a developer, and I understand what the campus has gone through, and this is a very thorough vetting. I mean, the last 5 years, they've looked at so many issues that it would be sad to limit this progress and growth of this vital institution in the city, and have a piecemeal approach to this. I think they've taken a very comprehensive view of this. And from my experience, I think it's the right move. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Vanessa Spiro, followed by our final speaker, Clifford Levine.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Spiro. I live at 1180 Murray Hill. I do not approve of the plan as in place now and think it needs more work. Fortunately, according to the school's own IMP, this plan is not necessary now for its projected growth over the next 10 years. And I think the parties need to take time to do it right, because our avenue is already choking under changes, including, as noted, more than the doubled student body over the last 6 years. The city's zoning law requires the applicant to identify standards or programs to ensure quality of life of the neighborhoods is maintained or enhanced. And the City Planning Commission conditioned its approval on resolution of things like traffic patterns and buffers. None of that changed since the prior draft. Now, Chatham did, as the language shows, adopt some things. They've corrected some public health and safety issues unilaterally created by the school, such as daily blockage of the streets, smoking in neighbors' homes, and the like. It also promised to do again what it had previously promised to do in terms of parking lot beautification and supporting historical designation. And it even gave a good neighbor promise that it would limit construction vehicles from parking on the street if possible. But nothing enhances or maintains the value of our residential street that's been there for over 120 years. We asked for a buffer that 1163, a residential home, stay residential. They're going to bring the campus to that, as they just noted here. So we have campus activity directly on site, as well as additional parking needs. So those workers will need to park someplace. That wasn't contemplated by the transportation study. Parking is already a very big problem. The transportation study outlined that, said it currently doesn't meet needs. There is a problem on our street in that homeowners don't have parking themselves in front of their own house. The transportation study forecast problems in the future, and it didn't even take into account what happens if 1163 is rezoned out of residential. And it ignored the fact that 80 new students will be there in the new dorm being built right there. So please, I ask the city council, do not continue to ignore the parking problems on this residential street, because it's been ignored for decades apparently, and it has really become a problem, and it will only be more so, and that's all documented already. So I finally note that we need more time to correct this, to deal with these issues, and we shouldn't rush it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final speaker is Clifford Levine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to participate. I actually am wearing two hats. I was serving as counsel to Alan I.W. Frank, who owns a incredibly historic landmark house right next to the campus on the east side at next to Fix Hall. And I'm also a resident living across the street from the three homes that have been subject to a lot of discussion. I actually have experienced this process twice now. I was on the Planning Commission 20 years ago, where there was a new athletic building being proposed, and there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of neighborhood issues. And I ended up working with Mayor Murphy in my capacity on the Planning Commission to try to reach some sort of resolution. So I appreciate really firsthand how difficult it is, sometimes competing with a lot of very legitimate and valid interests. But I do want to note that I thought this year it was a little bit different, and I would ascribe that to President Feingold and to the spirit that his team, Walter, Ken, Sean Gallagher, had in terms of reaching out with the community. As you can hear already, there's different views where, depending where you live on a particular street, as to what you'd like to see. And I think we were all trying to work together. And I really appreciate the very constructive remarks of many of my neighbors, not all of whom are here, but trying to reach a resolution. As for the Frank House, the resolution, we included a provision about determining exactly where the property line is and having appropriate buffer for what truly is a historic building designed by Walter Gropius, the famous Harvard dean of the architecture school. And we have a 1-year period to work, and we look forward to working with Chatham to effectively block that historic house from light and other noise effects of the dorms. As for Murray Hill, I would like to just note one technical point. Kate Rakes indicated at the outset that I think 1163 and 1165 were in the EMI. If you look at page 96, it's only 1163. That was after much negotiation. So I just want to be clear and hope that only 1163, which is the immediate adjacent property, is in the EMI per on page 96, 1165 and 1167 are not. And then all three properties are going to be subject to the historic district per our discussions. The final thing I just want to say with Chatham is I think Murray Hill has, some of the concerns of the neighbors is that Murray Hill has served a little bit as a back alley into the campus. And I think that President Feingold and I know Ken Doigneau has been very receptive to the idea that this could be an attractive entrance. He showed a depiction of that. That would include limiting some of the parking issues, some of the vehicles, some of the access issues. And I think the gist of that is reflected in the on page 96, 97, and 98. So as a resident who's actually gone through this, I think that there was a
Thank you very much. Apologies to cut you off. You have reached your 3-minute limit for public comments, but I wanted to say briefly before turning it over to any of my colleagues who'd like to speak that I really appreciate everyone who's here today, all the public commenters and all of your comments. And just in case anyone who spoke today has to leave the meeting before the end of the meeting, I do want to say that we do have all of your email addresses and your phone numbers. And so for anyone who has not yet been in touch with me directly, has not yet had the conversations that they'd like to have with Chatham University, I will be reaching out, my office will be reaching out to you to help facilitate those conversations, to set that up. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is still the beginning of the conversation, not the end. We might be reaching the end of a process around an institutional master plan, but this is still, there's still quite a bit of an infinite amount of room for public meetings and for smaller meetings and for conversations about the future of Chatham's campus. So with that, I'd like to offer to my colleague, Councilwoman Deb Gross, if she has any comments or questions.
Thank you all, and I appreciate everyone being here to present the plan and to hear public comment and those who called in as well. I just wanted to recount a little bit of the conversation that I had during my briefing with the team, and some of the things that I forgot to mention, which is that in listening to the presentation today and also last week when I had my briefing, that I probably failed to mention how much I appreciate the work that Chatham does. So aside from the campus plan, you know, I have to recollect that over the years, I've worked closely with the Center for Women in Politics. They continue to host the kind of the campaign training that it's actually escaping me. I've actually presented when there were 4 women on city council before Councilwoman Strasburger served. We were presenters at the
Ready to
electoral
Run?
training. Say it again.
Ready to Run.
Thank you. Ready to Run. And then it was some 2 years ago, I think I was also a presenter on the panel, and it's really created a robust network of especially women, not only women, but especially women interested in electoral politics and campaigning. And I think it's been incredibly fruitful. I've personally had a tour of the campus in Gibsonia, which again, it's escaping my name. I've had dogs barking through a lot of this presentation, so excuse me, a little distracted. So the stormwater retention facilities that have been built up there, and the contribution to understanding Native agriculture is incredibly beneficial. The work that the Women's Entrepreneurship and SBDC does, I've partnered with their team on efforts to work with the female-owned small businesses in my district. I could actually keep going on. I'm a huge fan of the CRAFT initiative that is supporting the industries that are specially dominated by women in business. So from crafts to like food value added preparation. I'm always wishing I could sign up for their classes, and I never have. So everything from like making kombucha to how to, you know, carve a cow or whatever it is. I mean, they have all kinds of crazy classes. So I think it's fantastic. I did have some questions that I ask. I feel like I consistently raise around all of the EMIs. And so I just wanted to share those. Again, I'm grateful for the stormwater. You always hear me talking about stormwater and our sewer sheds every time we discuss even a little sewer module at City Council. And this one especially hosts the very top of the A22 sewer shed, which Councilwoman Strasburger and I share, although I think I actually have a bigger footprint of it in the downstream. And Councilwoman Strasburg in District 8 has the upstream, but it goes from the Chatham campus down through Shady Side, but then across Baum Center, includes Shady Side Hospital, includes even all the way up to Moorwood and Millvale, where the kind of pit expansion is, down through almost all of Bloomfield, part of Polish Hill, and down into Lawrenceville, where it kind of meets the Strip District, where it is almost continuously outfalling because it is just a giant intersection of pipes across a very highly densely populated and very full of concrete part of the city. So I am very grateful for the stormwater retention that you're including there, and we desperately need that throughout the A22. I have also raised questions about the permeability, not just of stormwater, but of people through campuses. So I also appreciate the pathways that you're putting in. I raised that question, in my district when West Penn was redoing its master plan. How can people get through the super block instead of being forced to walk all around it? So to have those clear pathways that people can to get through these big campuses. One of the things that I raised that I don't think any of us has a good answer for, but I'll still share it publicly, and have raised these questions before with other EMIs, so I'll just put it in here for the record, is that these big campuses that the city hosts, from stadiums to hospitals, universities, all of the big institutions, and then the other kind of big assembly sites, take up physical space, but then also host workforces that create housing demand that we are not meeting. And so I've personally spoken with workers who work at other campuses and EMI districts who can't afford to live in the city. You hear city council struggling with this issue now for years, and we've still falling short of meeting these needs. And it is part of the cost that is created to the public with these large campuses, even though there's so much that they bring to the city. It's our job as city council to make sure that there's not too much of the burden of the cost put onto the public or the public purse. So there's no answer today for that. I just wanted to acknowledge it because I have raised these issues when discussing other EMIs. So other than that, I was really grateful to hear the input and just to acknowledge that I see the hard work that you and with Councilwoman Strasburg have put into kind of addressing public concerns and building a campus that is really beneficial to the city. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Councilwoman Strasburg.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross. I did want to, I did hear some questions that had been asked and answered in a previous briefing. I didn't know if there were any questions that were raised today by Councilwoman Gross that members of the Chatham team wanted to address so that the public could also hear answers to those. Some of them were already covered in the presentation, stormwater, but just wanted to leave that space in case anyone wanted to. And if you don't, that's fine too. If there's not really an answer, I understand there weren't exactly questions asked, just questions that were sort of mentioned.
Just super briefly, in our briefing with Councilwoman Gross, we did have an opportunity to also talk about the role of the East Side campus, the 7+ acre campus at Penn and Fifth that has an opportunity, and we have done some planning around that, both to improve the traffic and access issues for parking, but also sustainability, stormwater management, and even potentially housing in that context. But that's not part of this particular piece of legislation. But I did want to just put that on the record because I think it's once again shows the university's thoughtfulness and foresight in securing that really important parcel in that location.
And I just wanted to add on the affordable housing, we certainly see that need. Our own graduate students, our employees are looking for opportunities. And part of the community partnerships I mentioned, and I really appreciated your listing of the others I didn't have time for, is thinking about, Chatham really borders on Larimer, Homewood, Wilkinsburg, 3 areas that have a land available, they have vacant properties available, and thoughtful development with community partners like we did with Graham Field, I think is a great opportunity that would benefit it. I think, we're eager to be part of that in any way we can to help move that forward. We don't own those lands ourselves, but we've been working with community groups to try to do what we can to help.
Thank you. Well, I'll end the hearing today by giving just a few brief remarks from my perspective. And I realized I didn't actually introduce myself at the beginning of the hearing, but the reason I'm chairing the hearing as a city council member is because I represent the council district that Chatham falls into, and that's Council District 8. And I have been at the table for the last 6 months since these two bills came to council, or were about to come to council after approval of the Planning Commission. And we really slowed the process down. We took time and slowed the process down to really be able to meet with and work with residents, especially from the Murray Hill Avenue corridor, who had major concerns with what they saw in the plan, a lot based on history. But I want to acknowledge that, you know, there are other concerns here today that we heard that maybe we haven't worked through yet. But again, as I mentioned before, this is the beginning of an opportunity for communication between those residents and my office, and those residents and the university. And I know that the university is just as eager to meet with you and talk with you and address those concerns as I am. And the concerns I heard are valid. Some of them have to do with quality of life issues, parking, traffic, just interactions with neighbors who happen to be students or faculty or staff on a college campus. Some of them have to do with the larger issue of change. That change can be difficult. Seeing change around you, whether it's in your backyard or it's in your neighborhood, can be difficult to adapt to. Some of them have to do with trust. You know, there's a need for, in any institutional master plan and rezoning, a need for some trust, because not everything that is included is necessarily going to be enforceable. Many things are. Many things that we were able to cover in these last 6 months in negotiations and conversations are enforceable, but many really hinge on ongoing trust between partners, between organizations and entities. And some of the concerns I heard center on communication issues. And again, that's something that we have an opportunity to really continue to improve upon. Over the last 6 months, once the bills were introduced to council and passed through the Planning Commission, I would say that we've made a significant amount of progress, not just on many actual tangible issues, neighborhood issues, most affecting Murray Hill neighbors. But I think the most important progress that we've made has been the forming of an actual group, of a small burgeoning group on Murray Hill Avenue that will allow for a point of contact for my office and for the university to be able to reach those neighbors when issues, challenges, problems as with having a university as your neighbor comes up before it reaches a boiling point. I think that that's a really, really positive step in the right direction. I look forward to establishing that same sort of relationship with many of the Fifth Avenue neighbors and beyond Fifth Avenue, Kentucky Avenue, Maryland Avenue, that Chatham currently enjoys with the Woodland Avenue Association, and has been and has had that relationship for many, many years now. You know, for the Fifth Avenue neighbors and the Kentucky Avenue neighbor, I wish I had heard from you sooner. We could have, you know, been working this last 6 months as well, but that's not to say that we can't do the same in the future. A master plan, an institutional master plan in particular, is a plan. It's not a permit for construction. It's not a groundbreaking ceremony. It is a plan that requires additional conversations and additional work in order to solidify. And that's, I think, the major point I want to make today, is that there is still room for a whole lot of work and a whole lot of conversation before any shovels are in the ground. I'd also like to mention some of the kind of tangible progress that you'll see on pages 96 and 97 and beyond in the institutional master plan that were amendments that were added to the plan based on the conversations we've had over the last 6 months. It's a commitment to better landscaping, as Mr. Levine said, treating the entrance to Chatham University on Murray Hill Avenue as more of a front entrance rather than a back entrance. Quarterly meetings with the organization, which is now called the Murray Hill Neighbors Organization, and my office and the registered community organizations. Exclusion of 2 of the 3 houses on Murray Hill Avenue that have traditionally been residential, and one of which will, you know, have the opportunity to be something other than residential on a temporary basis, the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, but in the future could be a number of things with limits, though. That's something else that we were able to negotiate. So I would say exclusion of 2 of the 3 Murray Hill houses from the rezoning, the EMI rezoning. Limits on the size of the proposed dorm extension, limits on Chatham-related traffic and parking, and a commitment to communicate into the future. So I really think that this being codified by City Council gives some leverage to neighbors. There are many issues in here that are going to be codified, and that will allow for neighbors to be able to point to something and say, this is a commitment you made. We need you to maintain this commitment. And I have all faith in Chatham and its leadership right now to make good on that promise and make good on the commitments that they've made within the plan, not just because it's in the plan, but because they want to be good neighbors. There's a tremendous amount of history here. It's an old university. These are old historic streets, and that can be a wonderful thing. It's part of the reason that this area of Squirrel Hill and Shadyside is so special. It also presents obvious challenges. And there's a tremendous amount of history with neighbors and the institution. And what I would just urge everyone to do, as hard as it can be, is to look forward and not to look back. We have to move forward. There are some beautiful changes that are coming to campus that will benefit the lives of not only the people who live nearby, not only the people who work and live and seek their education on campus, but anyone who's visiting the campus and anyone who's visiting Fifth Avenue for that matter. So I hope we can all look forward together. I look forward to, in the coming weeks, along with my colleagues, passing this rezoning bill, this institutional master plan, and then really being able to continue the conversations with all neighbors, with the university and its partners, and with the registered community organizations as well, which is something that we did not have 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But with the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition and the Shadyside Action Coalition as registered community organizations, we really have an opportunity to continue to work collaboratively as we've started to do these last several months. And as Chatham really has done with many, many neighbors over the last years and decades. So that's really all I wanted to say today. Happy to continue the conversation. And I wanted to open it up in case anyone else as an invited guest had any other final remarks. Anything else they wanted to address? All right, seeing none, we have exhausted the business of our public hearing, and I will move to adjourn this meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.